Hearthstone Grandmasters for Europe, and it's time to battle. RDU versus Kolento is our first match of the day, kicking things off. I'm Nathan Zamora, a.k.a. That's Admirable, joined by Simon Welch, a.k.a. Sottle. And Sottle, we got a heck of a match here. For Kolento, he's battling to try to chase down that first place spot, and for RDU, it's about staying alive. Gotta win.
And when matches are important as this one is, you know what you do, Admirable? You protect your priest. And that's what we are seeing from both sides. While we're on this note, how many priest protections did we see last week in Europe?
You know, that's an excellent question. We saw players deviating from the priest protection a lot of times. Kolento last week had Hunter, for instance, and he was protecting his Hunter. You know, he's done that a number of weeks in a row. And for like Casey and Bunny Hopper, for instance, we were seeing like the Shaman protect ideal scenario in there. Boston last week protected his Shaman and banned away the opposing Shaman. It seemed that he's garnered a lot of respect for that deck's just overall power in general as well.
Okay.
Some of it does pan out to lineups. I had some explanations that were given to me, and that player asked to remain anonymous within this to keep their strategy set. But there are a couple of particular popular lineups where you do not protect your priest, and you are not necessarily interested in banning it. Those lineups,
in this unknown player's perspective, at least.
In this unknown player's perspective, at least, who I was free to list that they had a positive win rate.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
Particularly against priest.
Sure.
But there are certain lineup conditions where it's not the case, and a lot of those boil down to whether or not you have a double weapons project warrior that is in your lineup. When you have that sometimes can change the dynamic.
I would certainly agree with that, but we can get back to that kind of thing when it becomes more relevant, because Kolento does not have a double weapons project warrior in his lineup, and he does not have a warrior at all, which is a big talking point. I like one thing Kolento has done with his lineup this week, and I dislike another, and that's the Hunter and the Warrior. The absence of Warrior I like. If you look at the performance of Control Warrior in Grandmasters, it's performed abysmally. And it kind of makes sense to me why that is when you look at the kind of pocket metagame that we have. The good matchup that it has is against Holy Wrath Paladin, and even then players have been throwing away percentage against Holy Wrath Paladin with the way they've been playing, as a huge role on the Lackey comes out to take care of Priest versus Minion. So I like that Kolento has not gone with Warrior here. I think there's been too much faith in Control Warrior going into these last weeks when it's been underperforming. But on the flip side of that, Kolento's Highlander Hunter is one of the best performing archetypes across all of Grandmasters. He was the one player that you could say has been in the right in terms of the stats, has been bringing that deck consistently. This week he's thrown that Hunter away. He's playing a Murloc Paladin instead. What is going on, Admirable?
Playing Murloc Paladin. Felt like playing some Murlocs, man.
I know you have a theory on what's going on. I didn't know if you were going to want to share there on the or not, so I thought I'd throw it out to you.
All right. I'll get into a little bit of theory time here. So Kolento playing Murloc Paladin, I think, is doing this to try and hide some tech. I think he doesn't want players to know what he's going to be up to next week. I think that rather than encourage them, he would rather discourage them, or perhaps even throw off their scent by bringing Murloc Paladin and winning with it. Last time he brought Murloc Paladin, he did pick up wins with it. Might just be like a timing call. Maybe it's good versus specifically some kind of archetypes. You know, like versus Hunter specifically, I feel like Paladin's really not that bad.
You belong to the
What's a Hunter deck with no Unleash going to do against Tip the Scales? You going to play a Subject 9? Yeah, have a blast with that one.
Meanwhile, this one Rush Lackey has been doing the Lord's work for RDU. It's come down crucially off that Sludge Slurper to take care of the first 2-3. He's then been able to bounce it and rush in his Bug Slosher to take care of the follow-up minion. The bad news for RDU, though, is that the Northshire Cleric is still very much alive and trucking, and that gives Kolento options. That always gives Priest options. The number one thing you should try and do to defeat Priest is shut down the card draw. That's why we see Plague of Murlocs. It's why we see Earthshock. It's why we see Priest sometimes making weird plays where they leave minions injured that didn't have to be injured at the end of a turn, just so they have Cleric outs on the following turn. Like, this card is the engine that makes this deck run. So you are not winning until you have killed these Clerics.
You know, talking about that, though, in perception and lineups and such, this is a matchup that I feel like has probably changed the most in perception, is Quest Shaman versus Priest.
Yep.
Where, we've been preaching it the whole time. This is a bad matchup for Shaman. However, the last few weeks in GM, we have been seeing it just tip ever so slightly to where the Shamans are like squeaking out wins.
Yeah. I think it's still Priest favored by a chunk. But I think you are right in that we presented it as kind of a free win matchup early on, and it's absolutely not that. Like, the Shamans have definitely shown that they've got some serious game against it.
You say kind of a chunk, but explain to me how big of a chunk that we're talking about here.
Like 55 to 57, somewhere around there.
57 would be really bad. 55 is already bad enough.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, every time I watch it, I'm like, Shaman's going to lose. And then 2 turns later, I'm like, they might win this game. And then a Northshire Cleric turn happens, I'm like, they're going to lose. And then I see a draw, and I'm like, oh, hang on, they actually might win this game. And that is the way I feel the entire game.
Yeah.
I feel like this is another one of those games. I saw that Northshire Cleric happen, I was like, RDU's going to lose. Gets to kill the Cleric here. Well, Shaman might win. And then Kolento has Silence and Pyromancer with extra arms this turn. I'm like, Shaman's going to lose. And I'm looking at Mind Control Tech and Barista on the other side. I'm thinking, wow, RDU might win. And then I'm looking at Bwansamdi in hand, and I'm like, Shaman's going to lose.
All right, guys, you don't have to watch the rest of the game. Admirable has already laid it out for you.
I don't know. I don't know. And I don't really know until, like, it's too late, if that makes sense. This, to me, has become one of the most interesting matchups is because it constantly seesaws back and forth.
I agree with that for sure. Are we making a top seed Light Warden this turn?
So let's
very much like it to me.
Order of operations for me. Number 1, what's the most powerful thing you can do this turn? Number 2, what on RDU's board do you need to take care of? And then number 3, how do you make sure that the most amount of your stuff stays alive?
Blow up my opponent's entire board, everything, and that's what I was asking, is my answer to those 3 questions. I think Pyromancer, more arms on the Pyromancer, top seed the Light Warden. The Light Warden first. So you could choose to take 1 damage on the eventual attack here for the Light Warden. He's going to do it 2 spell way instead of 3 spell way. But again, I think Kolento could have had this as a 1-2, which I would prefer in this position if he'd have sequenced it differently. He only needed 1 attack to trade through the Questing Explorer, and he'd have 2 health to be out of range of Sandstorm. But the quest is active anyway. So yeah, sure. Okay, 2-1 is probably better than 1-2 in this scenario. Makes sense.
You see what I mean? My explanation feels exactly what I set out right now, where I'm like, ooh, that turn happens. Not good for RDU.
Nope.
That was probably the worst draw on the deck as well.
I mean, if we're going to flex on him, like, I feel like this also puts pay to the idea that this is still a very Priest-favored matchup because RDU had all the answers early. Like, he killed multiple minions in the early game, and Kolento just still has game to come back against that. You do have your Pyromancer turn. You do have your Bwansamdi turn. Yes, Kolento drew both of them.
RDU was missing 2 very important tools this game. Number 1, Sandstorm Elemental for a spot just like this one.
Yep.
Number 2 was Mutate on the previous turn, with the Mogu staying alive at 3-1. So now he's just got to throw stuff out, fight for board, and hope that he gets the right outcomes here. And so for this totem, I'm thinking Ethereal Lackey. Oh, boy. Okay, so now that that's happened, Kolento very much, I think, is eyeing this Psychopomp this turn. But he's got to think about that first Mind Control tech coming down with the amount of time RDU took. Is that likely that he still has a second one? Don't know, but Kolento likes to play around stuff sometimes. Question number 2 is how impactful is that steal should it be on the other side of the board? And so I feel like this is a load-up turn and look for Bwansamdi on the following.
Yeah, I think it depends on what the Psychopomp outcome is here as well. Like, if it's 2-6, yeah, now that's a problem because the Mind Control tech is just so heavily weighted towards 1 minion losing you the game that I think potentially you can choose to play around it here.
I think it's wise. You have a Bwansamdi next turn.
Light Warden goes down.
Yep. The opponent's possibilities.
Yep, love this. Next turn you play Bwansamdi and you have a nice 3-1 on the board that you can trade off into something to continue to play around Mind Control tech.
This Ethereal Lackey's big, and it's got a Bog Slosher to go with it. So we're looking at 4 spells that are coming up in the next 2 turns possibility. I'm thinking Earthquake.
You are thinking correctly.
Okay, I didn't think beyond Earthquake.
I saw the Earthquake and I stopped thinking.
You belong to the bar now.
So now, once again, even though RDU looked like he was in abysmal shape, I'm back in that spot where I'm like, don't know, maybe he wins now. Hex seems pretty appealing. It's pretty clunky with your current hand, but I think you're in for the long haul here.
Yeah, the problem was with all this great gas that RDU now has to answer threats, like, Kolento still just happily trades and plays a 7/7 this turn. And now with second Divine Spirit in hand, he's going to find himself the card drawer off the Bomb Samdi, and then if he finds himself the Inner Fire, the game ends. Like, it's... Well, even with all that removal, it's hard to keep Priest off board to the point where you can actually stop double Divine Spirit and Inner Fire killing you.
That is true, but Bwansamdi has drawn only 2 cards in this instance. This board for Kolento's getting cleared off this turn. And when it's cleared off, that means Northshire Cleric's not drawing the card instantaneously. And with 2 hexes in hand, I feel like RDU might have the fight here to actually keep a contained board position. That Earthquake, that's massive.
Yeah, the problem is the Reborn minion, though, right?
Well, you attack it, then you Earthquake.
Yes, with the 5/5 being alive, Kolento did have trade options. Chose to push the damage. I personally wonder how much face damage is worth when you are staring at 2 Divine Spirits, a Beaming Psychic, and a Northshire Cleric in your hand.
The 2 Divine Spirits is what gets me. That tells me face damage is worth less.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think RDU's got game here. I think he's got strong game. Woo. Earthquake clearing off Reborn stuff is so important. And for Kolento, like, one of the things in this matchup that you typically do, there's no Earthshock, there's no transformation naturally on RDU's side.
Right.
One of the ways that you stick stuff to the board is by preemptively using Divine Spirit. In this situation, that's a disaster for Kolento now.
I think when your opponent has 4 random spells, the 2 biggest things you're going to want to play around are Earthquake and Hex, because they're the cards that you're going to lose to. I think you beat just about everything else in that scenario. Stormbringer can steal a win for you. Like Rain of Toads can be a problem, but the big killers are Earthquake and Hex. Which is why I'm maybe just a little bit surprised that Kolento didn't respect the Earthquake on the previous turn.
I think that might have been the one slip-up. It's tough to respect random generated spells, but
it is.
If that's the way you lose, that's the way you lose.
When your opponent gets to pick 4 of them from seeing 12 options, though, I think that's time to start respecting some stuff.
For RDU, it's looking like Rockbiter and Hex. How do you contest the Light Warden, however?
If he Rockbiters and Hexes here, he dies.
What to do?
Why?
He goes to 20 from Rockbitering.
No.
You're going to Rockbiter the Cleric?
Yes.
Okay.
I want to Rockbiter the Cleric and Hex the 4/5.
Sure. Yeah, this keeps him alive.
I want to think about this Mind Control tech or this Wasp as well. I think I'd personally rather use the Mind Control tech. You draw a Lackey, that Wasp is huge. How often is your opponent going to play 2 more minions? And the steal be relevant?
Rarely.
This could also be for like preemptive Barista setup. Or if you draw a Lackey, you get to play Lackey, Barista.
Yeah, sure.
Have more Wasps. Of course, Psycho Pump gets drawn right as I mentioned the extra minion conundrum.
I wonder.
This feels like a tiptoeing scenario for both players.
It does, yeah. Kolento now pretty much out of card draw unless this Psychopomp finds him another Northshire Cleric. Pretty important to play it here before that Frog goes into the pool as well. The problem now is that second Hex from RDU, which can take care of the high health minion that comes out of this Psychopomp, and then there'll just be a 3/1 left on board, which does not play nicely. So now Kolento has to think, Beaming Sidekick, draw a card with it now, or save it for the OTK.
So you think about, whoa. Whoa! He's playing around Mind Control tech still.
Yep. He's played around Mind Control tech, but he hasn't played around the Hex, unfortunately for him. I think this is absolutely the right call in Kolento's position. Like, having just said earlier, like, when your opponent gets to pick 4 cards out of 12 options, you start respecting some stuff. When your opponent's already used 3 of those cards, you can stop respecting some stuff at that point. It just so happens that RDU got absolute gas off of his Discovers.
I'm looking at Hex and Life Drinker. I want to start topping myself off. I want to make sure I shut down the card draw. And Kolento's deck is full of a lot of nonsense that's not super good right now.
High Priest Armet, though, that's the scary card for RDU.
It's a scary one, but there are a lot of not scary ones. I'm thinking 2 Neferset Ritualists. I'm thinking Silence.
Little time.
Circle of Healing has diminished.
I'm thinking Kolento's been sat on these 5 cards for a very, very long time, and one of those definitely could be Armet. It'd be a kind of stylistic read on the way that Kolento plays as well, right? To just try and starve RDU out over the long game and have the big Armet blowout.
I don't know. I think leaving up this Northshire Cleric is extremely dangerous.
It absolutely is. There's no doubt about that.
Mechano Egg, not ideal.
Everything that you do against Priest is extremely dangerous, though. That is 24 damage.
Wow, you counted that up quick.
20 on the Cleric, 3 from the Psychopomp, 1 on the Frog.
Is that something RDU might have calculated with this Life Drinker Barista play? Like, if RDU moves, I'm sorry, if Kolento moves in here, you get to Hex and then double Life Drinker?
Oh yeah, he doesn't die this turn. I think based on the remaining cards, he actually does not die this turn.
It would take Power Word Shield, right?
It would take Power Word Shield, yeah. Okay.
But I think when you account 2 copies of Silence in the opposing deck...
I wonder.
Second Psychic is gone, the extra arms is gone. So yeah, you're asking your opponent to have 5 cards that kill you in a 6-card hand.
Quickly. I mean, how much longer can you continue to play around Mind Control tech? Like, at this point, just Interfire the Frog and trade it off. Like, I mean, my gosh. RDU's alive!
That went spectacularly well for RDU. He probably cannot believe how well that went for him.
Did it go well? Like, he's still sitting with basically the exact same hand.
He got a 4-5 and a Mechano Egg in play, then just nothing happened from his opponent's turn. Well, like, I think you have to consider that a success.
I wouldn't consider it a failure, but I can promise you RDU is not comfortable.
Oh, of course he isn't. Just the position that he's in the lead more than anything means that he's not going to be comfortable in any given position. But when your opponent hero power passes, I think you have to call that a success.
It's time to start hexing. Hex to Northshire. Don't let him draw.
Agreed.
Illidan cranking out 2 1s. But now Kolento has seen that hex. He waited for so long to get to this point. RDU still gonna wait on attacking. He's trying to land this Mind Control tech. Like, now you've just told Kolento you have it in hand.
RDU just looked at the board, grinned, and went, all right, I guess I'm not killing this 0-1. Like, it's a pretty transparent play from Kolento's side. But having now played his Hex, this is super smart from RDU because he knows the card that he loses to here, and it's High Prince Armet. So if High Prince Armet is played here, then Kolento has to inner-fire his own frogs to trade them off in order to play multiple minions alongside that High Prince Armet.
I love how he's just upgraded to a prince.
What is it? Oh yeah, I said it multiple times as well. Yeah, all right, whatever.
You're thinking Illidan.
Yes.
Prince Illidan.
Yes, I got heavily debated.
And if RDU if Kolento goes for this line of play, using these Divine Spirits and loading up cuts dramatically into the health of this Wild Pyromancer.
Yep.
Quickly. But is that a clear?
Clear is exciting to me this turn.
I must consider.
Beaming Sidekick, heal it up, Divine Spirit. Yep. I like this. I think this is sensible. No! Okay.
Guess one Divine Spirit,
Yeah. I just thought for a second the Divine Spirit wasn't coming down.
Oh, boy.
That's the whiff.
Oh, boy.
Tale of Two Halves, where Questing Explorer is involved. It's the best card in your deck in the early game. It is the worst draw in your deck in the late game. The only bad draw in your deck a lot of the time. When you're facing down relegation.
All right, I don't know about you, Sottle, but I'm a cut into the health of the big minion kind of player. And if I'm an RDU spot here, I'm thinking Shudderwalk or Lackeys. I don't think face damage is going to end. I don't think value trades are worth as much because of the Wild Pyromancer. I'm going to hit that Wild Pyromancer. I'm going to play my 2 minions and leave the rest up to the cards.
Sounds smart to me. I think RDU has been very, very careful this game to at least have some kind of security blanket in his hand for that High Priest Armet turn if it comes down. But I think this is the turn where maybe he has to give up on that. It's not like that mind control tech is going to land against Armet boards that Kolento can make now, especially since RDU turned that mind control tech face up last turn with the play that he made. Like, Kolento absolutely knows it's there based on the way that RDU played on the previous turn.
13 goes to 12. Its max health is 12 right now. And so it would be 14 max health, which is a hero power. You can then Divine Spirit to 28. Neferset Ritualist might have something to say about that. So heal to 14, Divine Spirit to 28. It gets cut to 27. That sounds like a connection. The time is nigh.
Oh, by the way, you also just incidentally killed your opponent's 2/2 in the process. Feels priest, man.
Already knows what's happening.
Life is an afterthought.
Yep. To make sure he secures the extra 28, takes the 1 point of damage on his Neferset to do that. That means that only the Neferset has to connect this turn.
It has to be big.
Admirable. It's the James Franco legendary. That's what he needs this turn.
Instead, it's Zentimo. Honestly, just a big taunt would have kept him alive for a turn.
Yeah. It would have kept him alive for a turn. I don't know how it would have gone towards winning the game unless there was like exactly a Shudderwalk top deck the next turn, but RDU hadn't played Giggling Inventors, so his Shudderwalk doesn't even play taunts in that scenario.
Doesn't have Giggling Inventor in the deck?
Exactly.
Yeah.
He needed a lot from that one legendary. You know, I made that reference to TJ, the James Franco thing, and he says he'd never heard you say that before.
Yeah,
like,
I was...
What?
I felt ridiculed.
That is like peak admirable, that reference. I did not understand. Does that guy know you at all?
I hope he does. Maybe he forgot. Been in Europe for a while now.
Yeah, it's true.
Kolento. How does he do it every game? He runs everybody out of resources and then wins with the final giant threat.
I think that was very, very nicely played from Kolento. I think there was one sequencing question I have with like the Light Warden turn where I think he got it right with the topsy-turvy and where that was in the order of operations.
The question was extra attack or extra health.
Yeah, and I think his decision was correct in that scenario. And then there was that one spot where like maybe I disagreed with the line on like the Blade Master turn, but over a super complex game like that where he was actually up against it against Shaman. When Shaman, you know, as much as we debated what the win rate is, when Shaman actually kills the first 2 minions you play, that can be an uphill struggle a lot of the time for Priest, and he was in that position, and he had a hand that did nothing for multiple turns, and I think he very, very nicely finessed the situation where he dodged both mind control techs. He beat Hex, Earthquake from the Ethereal Lackeys coming out. Like, that was not an easy Priest game to win, and he won it.
Yeah. Just the card draw missing from RDU's side. Needed Novice Engineer super badly. I think that was really the key factor.
Yeah, Cable Rats, just some kind of resource generator. Is he playing the Witchwood Piper list?
It's not. He's playing Stormbringer.
Of course, Stormbringer instead, yeah. So he had a few less cards that are just like instant hand refills, I guess, in that position. But I think when it got that late, like Witchwood Piper into Sludge Slurper, into Ethereal Lackey, into Earthshock still doesn't keep him alive. Like I'm referencing, he drew the Stormbringer that could have been a Witchwood Piper, right? But I think even then, he's still in a huge mess.
Yeah, needed a lot of stuff, I think, to come out of that one. But either way, it's game 1 over to Kolento's side, so now RDU back up against the wall. We got to go to a break. When we come back, though, we're going to find out if RDU is going to be in a tough spot or if he can pick up 2 straight and find himself in a better position. Stay tuned.